Hi guys, nice to see you again on my channel. I'm Andrew Zeleno, professional audio engineer with more than 10 years of experience in different fields of audio engineering. Last 5 years I have been a teacher for a unique mixing course, audio production course. It's pretty amazing. Check the description box, you will find information and links. I just offer you to check how we check homeworks with students. It's pretty long course in the Skype online. We meet each other every week, twice. What is really unique on my course, I'm working exactly on your projects. And we always compare your projects with the best sounding songs ever made, for example, by top 20 audio engineers. So we compare and we bring your mixes to the same level. It's pretty affordable and believe me, it's really game changer for you. I will do pretty soon reviews from my students from last 5 years. I'm gonna give you pretty a lot of different examples. We're gonna consider how it can have something to do with buying equipment. Example about bass guitar. You bought some medium price Fender jazz bass, for example, right? So it's a jazz bass, DI track, both pickups together. For your curiosity, if you're interested how it sounds, it was like this. With my processing, it sounds like this. Without. As you can see, without, it just sounds really muddy and low and pretty unfocused, you know. With my settings, it sounds like much more tight. What I did, I scooped a little bit of low mid, I found right frequency to make it a little bit clear without low hum. Also, I boosted lower part of upper mid-range because there is some articulation. When fingers touch strings, you know, all these little nuances a little bit more open. Definitely this type of bass with my settings will give more space for other instruments, more space in mid frequencies for vocals. Also, I boosted something around 1.5K, pretty narrow, but not crazy narrow, like medium Q, just because of it kind of gives more space around 3K, 5K, 6K for sounds sounding higher. For example, snare sounds more pronounced with my upper mid-range boost for this bass. It was like much higher than 0 dB VU. It's a trick, and especially with plugins which have emulation of input kind of module and output module, I mean line input and output transformer under this fader. Definitely it makes your sound a little bit more compressed, unfocused and fatter. That's why I lower line input and output fader to clean it up a little bit, and it sounds clear, more focused, more in the right spot in this case. So it's a trick with plugins which have emulation of so-called analog bass. So it definitely works great in this case. Also I use 11E76 with a little bit increased release. In this case I kind of playing the game when my tail of bass note goes down. For example, notice how quickly notes goes to silence. Kind of a, you know, it's not consistently sounding sustain of this bass. So I don't allow my compressor go back to position where it doesn't compress so quickly. When tail is louder, it's still under a lot of compression. When tail goes quieter and quieter with the same speed, our compression goes to position where it doesn't work. And that's why it's aligning our tail. It's evening our tail out in this way to make it pronounced with the same volume all the time, more or less, of course. Of course, I could go with more release, but at the same time, it would give us a little bit muffled sound because it has something to do with residual compression. I explain what residual compression during our course definitely, so check it. It sounds like this. So let's check without compression. And with compressor. See, it's like a tail sounding all the time without going to silence position. So absolutely amazing type of compression. It's a trick for you, you know. It's not a trick, it's just real clear understanding what's going on with your dynamics. I just ask myself what I have and what I want to achieve. And I have instantly a decision how I can do it just because of we deeply understand how it works. I wanted to show you an example how you can save money on your bass guitar sound. Typically, people based on some opinions of cool audio engineers, and you could probably find some information on the internet that Pultec equalizers are absolutely amazing for getting, like fat and warm bass sound. Okay, let's check it out. Actually, I understand that bass sound typically is pretty difficult to analyze, especially if you don't have proper monitors with a pretty correct kind of low-end response or subwoofers. So instead, I decided to show you this example based on drums, but imagine how it can be with the bass as well, because it's gonna be the same. So let's work with drums. So this is how our drums sound. If you're curious what the plugin over here is, just Universal Audio 88 RS. I just boosted a little bit, like 10K with shell filter. Also, it's an example how important to know your tools, because actually this equalizer has high shell with the resonance. It makes some gap around upper mid-range, and no matter how high you boost your high frequencies, it will not be increased like a lot comparing to other typical equalizers with more traditional shelf curves. Let's compare how it sounds without this plugin and with. So without. I don't mean you should EQ your drums like this. Definitely you should work with individual tracks. It's just for quick example. Anyway, notice how bad it sounds without this equalizer. Open, sounds bright. In the mix it will be sounding like pronounced punchy drums. Sounds much better cutting through the mix, if you imagine like how it will be sounding in the mix. I just have this thing, I kind of can predict how instruments can be sounding in the mix just after a lot of years working as a mixer. Definitely you can do it. Let me show you one interesting trick about this EQ. So first of all, as you can see, I boosted 10K with a shell filter over here. With this EQ, you have a resonant shelf, so it means when you boost high frequencies, you have little gap around upper mid-range at the same time. So your curve of high boost will be looking not like typical shelf equalizer like this, it's your X frequency. It will be looking like this, so you will have just a little bit of gap over here. So to compensate it, not to make our drums still muddy, I kind of help this shelf with a little bit of upper mid-range boost. So I found right frequency to compensate, so it's around like 4.5 or something like that. And I boost just a little bit over here with more or less natural like medium Q. So it's not super wide and not super narrow curve. Anyway, it's super soft and super awesome smoothing out equalizer. Definitely when you have something really sharp in the mix, this equalizer can be a really big help. So what I'm trying to say over here, let's bring some lows for these drums, and for this I'm gonna use this Pultec equalizer from Universal Audio as well. I'm gonna show you some typical situation. Let's say you have some typical bass. By typical bass I mean when you record your bass guitar like DI track. It will not be sounding like deep sounding bass. Typically you like to boost a little bit of low end to make it deeper, or you use bass guitar amplifier to make it deeper sounding, So in this way people typically say, okay, let's boost low end. You just got used to use Pultecs. Why? Because somebody said to do it in this way. Some cool audio engineer said, okay, Pultecs are perfect, the best way, the best choice for bass. And you say, okay, I'm gonna do the same. Just because of somebody says that, right? Huh? And you're gonna use this plugin with classic vintage equalizers. It's really common thing to have really slow moving shelf like this. It means if you're gonna boost 100 Hz or 80 Hz or 60 Hz, which is typical kind of settings for bass guitar, you will actually boost a lot of muddiness, humming, upper bass, a lot of maybe room resonances if it was recorded with a microphone. So it's actually not the greatest choice. So you're gonna boost over here 150, 200, 250, and it will be your muddiness. But you do it just, just because of somebody told you to do this, or some famous audio engineer does in this way, and your drums or bass sounds really muddy. Let me show you how it sounds. So for example, 100 Hz, and we boost lows. I'm gonna boost a little bit more than usual just to show you how it tends to sound. Just imagine it's your bass guitar and it sounds like super muddy, super boomy, and you say, okay, something wrong with my bass. And you go to a store and spend money on a newer bass, better pickups, or you change pickups, or you buy some other model of jazz bass. So you waste your time, you waste your money. Then you say, okay, maybe my strings should be newer strings. Or you say, your strings is too muddy sounding, let's try to find the brightest strings possible. So you spend your time, your strings, your money to experiment with a lot of strings. You change a plectrum to play your bass, for example, because you cannot change your fingers. Or, for example, you actually use bass guitar amplifier, but you say, maybe my bass guitar amplifier too muddy, because I cannot boost lows properly. Let's buy something else. Or you struggling with settings but you cannot achieve something good, or your microphone that you use to record your bass guitar amplifier, you believe it's not the right microphone. Maybe preamp for your microphone is not right model, maybe your converter is not right, so you buy and buy and buy trying to find better equipment. Then you realized that maybe you should know how Pultec equalizer works. Actually, it has attenuation. It's like resonance for low shelf, or just imagine it like bell cut somewhere around low mid. So in this way, by turning this knob, you can get rid of muddiness. And you try to do it like this. You turn it all the way, but it still sounds super muddy. So let me show you how it sounds without this equalizer. Is what? It's crazy muddiness. Why? Because your curve right now looks like this. So it's still really slow moving shelf, but you put some gap over here and so on. But because of you didn't realize it's a vintage type of shelf and it's so slow moving down, you use 100 Hz. So it means your curve looks like this, kind of to the right side a little bit. So your frequencies right now looks like this: 100 somewhere here, 200 somewhere here, and over here you have something like 500, 600 Hz. That's why your muddiness didn't disappear. And you still have a lot of muddy sounds, a lot of muddy sounding frequencies around low, mid and upper bass. So what you should realize, sometimes it's about mixing, it's not about your equipment. Sometimes you just need to learn properly, with no bullshit, reality about this equalizer. And reality that you should set up like 30. Let me show you. First of all, let me boost lows. Notice how less boomy it sounds when I go up to 7. Without, really clear. Muddy, boomy, but at the same time, let's say more or less okay. Let's compare 30 against 100. So 30 sounds pretty okay even with +7. And let me turn attenuation right now. Notice how this attenuation right now aims just in the right spot, somewhere around low, mid and upper bass. That's why it will be sounding really pronounced and really clear. low sounding drums, low sounding kick, but still as clear as it was before, right? So we just found the right frequencies for low boost and for low mid cut. For example, if you even try 60, it will not be working in this way. It sounds like boo 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 boo. Still a lot of low end boost and not right spot for low mid cut, you know, so that's why it doesn't work properly. So as you can see, just huge difference between 30 and 60. On its own, it sounds more or less okay, you know, but just imagine how it will be sounding in the mix, especially if you have a bass. Let's bring some bass over here. Something really wrong going on with the kick. Listen to the kick. If I go with 30, nice, clear, clean sounding kick. Of course, you should understand it's a EQ on a drum group. Definitely individual tracks, it will be just perfectly EQ'd. It's just an example how some even decision on frequency really makes like day and night. You know, like wrong and more or less okay settings. And you can be curious, what about 20? 20 will not be working as well. With these settings, it's just so low frequency, so 20 will put all this curve too much to the left. So over here, so you will be boosting like 20 hertz over here, it's 20. You will be boosting like, you know, maybe 60 somewhere over here, but at the same time your gap will be around really important frequencies, which is the body of a sound of these drums, like fundamental frequencies for the kick, for example. So it will be like, you know, like 120, 150, somewhere over here. That's why you lost kick totally over here in this way. You know, it's kind of too thin and too empty sounding drums. Without EQ probably will be even better. A little bit muddy, mid-rangey, but at the same time you have still some density. 20 Hz, absolutely empty drums. But 30 will give you what you need. Of course, it's not super correct levels over here. Boost, we should adjust properly amount of boost, amount of attenuation, kind of we should balance individual tracks. Again, I repeat, it's just an example how you consider equalizer. It's not a proper example how you mix drums. But as you can see, what I try to prove, typical person would go to a store, buy a newer bass, kind of because he just boosted 100 and his mix sounds like this. And he probably gonna say something, oh my god, my bass or my drums, so muddy, wrong microphones, let's buy something else, maybe different preamplifier, converters, all this stuff. Or they just gonna say something like, okay, it's too much on attenuation and on a boost knob, maybe we shouldn't allow ourselves to clean so much, and typically you're gonna go something like this. But you know, it doesn't sound clear, it doesn't sound like really mixed drums. I listen to these drums and I say, let's mix it. And you say, wait a second, I already mixed it. So it's not mixed enough. So this is what we learn on our course. Every little nuance, detail, how you understand relations between instruments, not only what you can do with actual instrument. When we learn Pultec, we even learn every plugin, every settings. We compare these different plugins, trying to figure out what's the difference. Our students easily can say, for example, how Waves plugins sound, how Slate's plugins sound, and how Universal Audio plugins sound. I'm not joking, by the way. Pretty controversial, but believe me, it's the truth. You really can define type of plugins from different manufacturers. They really sound different. It just proves, instead of buying newer instrument, maybe you should learn deeply how to work with your instruments, how to EQ it, how to compress it. So this is what defines professional mix and amateur mix, because over here you based on really what you hear. Every movement you do thoughtfully, not just because of somebody told you to do this, you know, that's why. But again, you know, what I can say in this video, it's like 0.001% of the whole course. And what the most important, I don't check your project right now. I cannot show you your mistakes. I cannot check how your project sounds comparing to top sounding mixes.